Broadcasting from the LoadingReadyRun orbiting underground moon base, it's the LRRcast. I appreciate that you actually waited until I was done the intro to start singing. I will tell you, as editor of the podcast, there's nothing I hate more than to hear Alex chime in with the song.
Yeah.
As Graham or somebody else is doing the intro.
Right.
So you hear LRRcast, and then just you hear Alex being like, "Do," and it's like, damn it, Alex. Hey guys.
One note song.
We are here for the second episode of Guilty Pleasures. This is recorded the day after the one that you heard last week. None of us have heard it. I sort of tangentially paid attention when they were recording it yesterday, but all I heard them talk about was like Captain America for 20 minutes, so I don't know what they were talking about. But we're here to talk about guilty pleasures, damn it.
Right, exactly.
So we might be non-canonical is what you're saying.
I think that's the plan.
That's cool.
So, okay, well, I guess let's start with the concept of guilty pleasures, and then actually actually talk about the things that we love that we should feel shame for, I suppose.
In our mouths and moving around a bit.
Do you guys agree with the term guilty pleasure? I mean, is it like do you actually, for the things that you're about to talk about, do you actually feel guilt or shame for enjoying these things?
There are groups of people I will not relate the fact that I like this stuff to, and so I wonder if that's like being a fan of anything. There's always going to be stuff where you're like, I really like this. I mean, like, talking about Captain America, it's like, oh yeah, the Captain America movies is kind of like, but those were fun and interesting and exciting, and even if you're into comics or you're not into comics, it's kind of like, it was an action movie and it's that kind of thing. I mean, if they made it like a serious drawn out drama or something, it's like, I really like that movie. It's like, why? It had nothing to do with,
Yeah.
But it's stuff that like the couple things I'm going to bring up anyway, if I can remember all of them again. It's like people I work with, I wouldn't tell them that I'm into this. But if they happen to, see my lock screen, they might be like, what's that all about? And then I might tell them about it, but it'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to volunteer that information.
Now, by guilty pleasure, are we talking like legally incriminating or just, things we don't want to talk about? I may need to change my list.
Let's go both. Oh. I'm curious. Let's see if we can get somebody arrested because of one of our podcasts.
All right.
There are, I guess I would agree with that. There are people who I probably won't go out of my way to tell them that I like something. Here's the thing, actually. I'll lead us off right away, just because it's something that I've sort of gotten judged for a lot over the last couple weeks, is at PAX. At PAX South, Jamie, who works for Penny Arcade and who is a big part of Child's Play, was wandering around, hanging out with everybody, and she ended up painting nails in Bandland, which is where we hang out most of the time.
Cool.
And I was like, hey, hook me up. Because I was like, I don't care. I have no problem with painted nails, and it, I'd stand out, and why not? Like, let's do it. Sure. So I painted them, and they were orange, and they look super cool, and I love them. And we were like, you know what? Let's make this like a tradition. Let's like at East, you'll paint my nails red. And if you're watching the video, and I don't know if you can see it, but I still actually have my pinky painted the red from East. Mm-hmm. And wow, the painted nails, actually more so in Boston than in San Antonio, elicited a lot of negative responses from people.
Like, what the hell is that?
Like, the default is, oh, did your little sister get bored, or why would you do that? And it's just like, because I felt like it, and none of your business. Like, I don't need to explain myself to you for enjoying doing something. Nothing else I'm going to say today has gotten me so much grief than these painted nails have the last 2 times I've done it, and I'll do it again at Prime.
What's funny about that is that I saw that and I was like, I could never do that.
No,
and I don't have a problem with you doing it or really anybody doing it, but it's just kind of one of those things where I'm like, I could never do that myself, and that's what makes it hard for me to relate,
That's fair.
right?
Yeah, I mean, like,
But I'm not going to judge anybody about that kind of... I mean, Penn Jillette went around for years, might still, with his ring finger colored red. And when people would ask him, it's like, why do you have that? And he's like, because it's remind me of the first guy I killed who asked me that question.
I thought it was just because he voted in an Indian election recently.
Oh, is that what they do?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Oh my god, that's amazing. That's a great story. So yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, the thing that actually shocked me more about that was I got more sort of sideway looks in Boston than I did in San Antonio. Everybody in and I'm talking about like outside of the convention center,
Right.
Where I don't think I got maybe one person inside PAX to be like, dude, what? But outside, like when you go for dinner or when you're at the hotel or anywhere in between, there was a lot of hate for my painted nails in Boston. So chill out, Boston. Jesus. You're so mean.
You're like, Red Sox, represent,
And like
that didn't even work.
I remember when I was coming through coming back into Canada through security in Toronto. The dude running security. First off, the penny arcade pins that I have a bit of an unhealthy obsession with, that got flagged real bad because there's like this big hunk of steel in my bag, and they're like, "We're gonna need to look at this," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's fair." But he was also very suspicious of my nails, which I thought was kind of weird.
Because he thought maybe it was, because it makes you stand out.
You're part of the counterculture.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was very interesting, but
Some sort of religious affiliation. It's
Yeah,
like, this is how
exactly.
many planes I was on when I blew them up.
Jesus, this is getting dark.
I know.
All right, so Ian, do you buy into the guilty pleasures? Do you feel bad for liking the things that you do?
Not at all. I mean, again, I have the same sort of opinion here that there are certain things that I will not tell certain people. I mean, Serge, if you're listening to this right now, you should turn off the podcast because
good.
you're going to get very angry. But especially when it comes to things like your painted nails, things that don't hurt other people.
Yeah.
There's no reason whatsoever to be ashamed of that.
No.
Yeah. But I guess the first guilty pleasure I'll probably bring up here is my love of coffee. But not what I'm going to refer to as third wave coffee.
Okay.
I finally had it explained to me what the difference is between the different waves of coffee.
I've never even heard of a wave of
Yeah.
coffee.
Well, you need to go on one of Serge's coffee adventures then.
All right.
He'll take you out and give you some very expensive coffee.
Yeah.
That's very rare and is very acidic and very fruity and not the kind of coffee that I like to drink.
All right.
Which is what?
Well, what I like to drink is, I think, what I call second wave plus. So first wave coffee.
Okay.
Let's break it down here. First wave coffee was the coffee that you used to get in the diners. Stuff that would sit in a pot all day, single thing, and when it runs out, they make a new pot. Second wave coffee is what happened when Starbucks came around. And
Okay.
they lifted coffee out of the garbage.
Sure.
And put it in everyone's mouths.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit better quality. You start to learn a little bit more about the beans. And then third wave coffee is where you start thinking about coffee in the same vein that you think of as wine and fine whiskeys.
Yeah.
Where you're taking into account the terroir and the origin of the coffee. And not just the terroir and the origin, but also the roasting methods and whatnot. And you taste the coffee, and you have to taste the coffee at different levels. So you a fresh, hot, right out of the brew method coffee. The taste profile is going to change as you drink it, so it's going to get a little bit more sweet or more sour as the cup cools.
Huh.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all of the third wave coffees I've tasted don't really have the coffee flavor that I actually guiltily like.
Okay.
Right.
And the reason I feel like this is a guilty pleasure is because I'm a Scotch snob. Let's face it.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who says, "Oh yeah, just roll it around in your mouth, feel the butter, and taste the floctals." And I don't get that with. There's nothing I've tasted so far in the third wave coffee, in this really highfalutin coffee,
Right.
that I like. And so I guess that's. Yeah, it makes me feel like I'm a hypocrite, which is a word that I hate so much.
All right.
Because we put so much emphasis on in our society right now about not being a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Right.
When in fact being hypocrites, in reality, it's just called changing your mind based on new information.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. But coffee wise, I just like a good solid cup of coffee that has a good dark mouthfeel to it. Something something full-bodied, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to be fussy about it. Doesn't mean I'm not going to make it in my fancy AeroPress with fresh ground beans and a nice roast. But that roast doesn't have to have been, I don't care what the wash profile of the roast is.
Yeah.
And I do want it dark and oily, which apparently is a sin.
Oh dear. Well, I mean, I'm sitting here drinking a Tim Hortons medium double, so nah, I'm worse.
So I can get judged from both ends is what's going on.
So that's actually something I did hear them talking about in the last version, or in the last episode of this podcast was, do you, when somebody finds out that you like something that maybe they don't like so much, and they judge you for it, or they make fun of you for it, or even more, actually, I'm more interested in if somebody makes fun of something that you like without them knowing that you like it. Do you take offense to that? Does that upset you? Do you get angry or sad or feel bad for what you like, or do you just get angry at them and are like, dude, come on, I'm sitting right here.
It depends on the item, but I think it comes into a teachable moment, I guess. I guess it also comes down to where that person's coming from.
Right.
Are they punching it up or punching it down?
Sure.
I mean, I feel offended if somebody is unfair. Like, and this happens at when I'm sitting around having coffee, and I don't even drink coffee, obviously, but when I'm having coffee with my workmates, and somebody mentions something that's kind of demonstrably untrue, like something that's like, not only do I have my opinion, but I have actual facts that don't back up the thing that you're saying, and then I'm trying to tell them, it's like, that's, here's the thing, X is wrong, but Y is actually right, and here's the reasons why. And they're like, oh, okay, and I always worry that I'm coming down as kind of the guy that's like, being a know-it-all, or like, I'm kind of throwing this back in their faces. And so more often than not, I just kind of like I can't think of even a single example where this has happened recently, but it's always kind of been, I try not to open my mouth very much because I just want to have a nice work day. I don't want to actually screw up anybody else's day.
Right.
Because I also don't want to make them feel bad for the way they feel about something either.
Yeah.
And, it's, I don't, if I was going to, like, if somebody was like, I have a bad opinion about this thing, and I'm like, I have a good opinion about this thing, I don't necessarily want to change their minds. But I do want them to realize it's like, oh, well, this person actually has a valid reason for having a good opinion about this. It's something they enjoy, and it's not really worth it to me to take their fun out of it.
Right.
It's to kind of be like, maybe you need to think a little bit more about how, like, you opening your mouth and saying something that's going to offend a chunk of people when you don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, it's weird because then you actually have to start thinking about the idea of what is a guilty pleasure again. I mean, to me, because I know that there is a different level of coffee,
right?
This suddenly becomes a guilty pleasure to me. I can look down on the lower forms of coffee. And would you consider that a guilty pleasure, knowing that I think of this as a good coffee?
You know what I've found always weird is that because you like Brewhouse. Mm-hmm.
Which is a cheap Alberta beer.
Yeah, and when you moved out here, you're like, I found a new cheap beer again. Mm-hmm. What is it,
Hellsbach?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I found a new cheap beer, and it always flummoxed me, knowing how you enjoy Scotch, like good whiskeys, or buying good hard liquor, that you would go out buy like a $10 bottle of wine and be like, I found like a new gem. And it's kind of like, and I can understand that because it's like, I found something that is actually good and only $10 a bottle, which means I can get really drunk on it and still enjoy the entire way through. But then cheap beer was always one of those things that you're kind of conditioned to understand that cheap beer is not a good thing because there's so many people out there drinking fine craft beer. And to you,
or at least pretending to, like,
right? It's like, I really like this because it cost me $3 a bottle, or $6 a bottle, or whatever.
Shock top.
Right, exactly. And so that always really surprised me that you were like, I found a new cheap beer. It's like, I would have thought that you would have not been all about that. But then again, but it's something you like. So I'm like, well, I don't even drink beer, so I'm not going to bring it up. But it kind of made me think, like, I can't square that circle. So that's why, when people have differing opinions about stuff with me, it's kind of like I have to give them the benefit of the doubt that it's like they must know what they like and what they're talking about. But it also then makes me think I shouldn't just jump to conclusions, because what if I'm talking shit about something that's one of their guilty pleasures, like reality TV, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I can't stand reality TV. It drives me up the wall. But if people like it, I'm not about to say, no, it's bad. Or like when you showed us...
It's a good point. We were just sitting around watching the King of the Nerds.
Yeah, season 3 finale.
yeah.
It might be one of my guilty pleasures then, because it's terrible TV, apparently.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone thinks of as reality TV.
Exactly.
And I think it's the closest thing to a good reality show since Strip Search.
Yeah, like Strip Search was great, because that was the thing about, like, when I sat down to watch that, I'm like, oh no, what did this become? Like, and LRR's involved and all that, and so was this going to be any good or not? And I watched it, and I'm like, oh wow, everybody got along. Everybody liked each other. Nobody wanted anyone else to lose, and that actually made it more. That made it more than the kind of stuff that's always been on the air, and it made me rethink my classification of, okay, what qualifies as reality TV? If this is reality TV, but people actually are willing to get along and maybe not work together, but at least like each other and understand that this is not a personal thing. This is all about winning the competition, and it's like we can still get along and be friends. And I was like, that's a positive,
Right.
So maybe I should rethink what I think about reality TV.
Okay, cool. So just circling back really quickly, you were talking about the relationship that you have with your coworkers when it comes to this sort of thing. Does that change for you when it becomes a close friend? And I mean, I guess you just sort of talked about it really quickly there with King of the Nerds. But when does it change when Ian comes in and makes fun of something that you like without maybe him knowing it?
My heart breaks every time.
Sorry, I will never like your taste in anime.
No, I'm aware of that, But that's fine, because there's like, I'll never be able to get into Gundam the way that you get into Gundam.
Exactly.
I can understand why Gundam's a good series, but I understand it academically. Like, I don't understand it from a point of pleasure, which is weird. It's like, I watch all of Zeta Gundam with you, and I'm like, this is a good show, but I cannot sit down and watch the whole oeuvre and be like, yeah, I got to take all this stuff in. It's like, it's not a driving force for me, and I'm glad it's for you. I'm glad it's for other people.
But that's it's the same thing. I'll sit down and I'll watch an episode of Gintama that you really. Like,
oh yeah.
You try your hardest to find out. Okay, which of these thousands of episodes?
Yep.
You're gonna tick Ian's boxes to get him into this.
Yep.
And
Nope.
Can't do it.
So is it enough to say to somebody, I don't like what you like, but it's okay that you like it? Do you think, like, is that enough? Like, if I was like, I hate anime, but it's okay that you like anime.
Yeah.
And that's not true. I'd like anime just fine, but I hate it, but it's okay that you do. Does that come off as, does it just make me look like a douche?
I think you really have to respect the person first before you can get to that stage. And I think that's someplace that we should all be with other human beings.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's the biggest hurdle that we sort of do need to get over, is that most of the time when somebody makes fun of something that I like, but then just sort of tries to reassure me that it's okay that I like it, it's
Right.
like, I know that it's okay that I like it because I like it, so fuck you.
Yeah.
And you're just coming off as just a condescending douche right now.
Well, it's like one of those things where it's like, I'm going to say this shitty thing. Oh, don't worry, I'm just joking around, even though I really hate it.
So let's bring this back to a really good example here that recently showed up on the Twitter sphere. Who likes sports?
I like sports. Sports.
I can take it or leave it.
I really don't like sports.
We got a whole
We got the whole spectrum here. Yeah.
So how do you feel when someone tweets about sports? Or more importantly, how do you feel, James, when someone makes fun of sports on the Twitters or in your person?
I don't. It doesn't really bother me. Like, again, like it's to each their own, right? I mean, if you like, I'm at a point where I've reached this point in my life where I'm super not concerned what other people think about things that I either like or don't like.
Right.
I don't care. I don't have time to focus the kind of hate or anger or anything like that. That is just a waste of my time. I'd rather just go watch sports.
Right.
Right. So when somebody is like, sports are dumb and you're dumb for liking sports, I'll just be like, whatever, that's fine. If you have a legitimate reason as to why sports are dumb and why I shouldn't watch them, a really good example right now is it's March Madness right now.
Right.
It's the NCAA tournament, big basketball tournament. A lot of people have an issue with this tournament, not because of basketball, but because of the way that the players are treated.
Right.
That's a legitimate that's a legitimate reason for you to say sports are bad and this is why.
Right.
Right. But if you're just here to tell me sports are bad because players make too much money and it's stupid and it's a waste of time and it's not contributing to society, then no, screw you. I don't care.
But by the way, the argument that players make too much money, I always reduce down to players make more money than I do, and that makes me upset.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing, right? And that's what most of this boils down to, is that it upsets you, and the only outlet that you have is to call people who like what you don't like dumb for liking it.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, with sports, it's like, that's fine. So, I mean, when people talk about sports on Twitter, do you get angry? Like, is this something that, like...
I used to be one of those people who'd go on Twitter and do the, sports ball, how do you shot puck?
Yeah.
And all that bullshit. And then someone it was very recently, I think it was the last big, during the Super Bowl.
Okay.
When there was kind of a backlash against that sort of thing. And it clicked in my head as well at that point. Like, yeah, why am I making fun of people I know, people I respect, for liking a thing?
Yeah.
That's not the nerd way.
Yeah. I mean, if you like something that is actually, bad for society, then yes, sure.
Yes.
I really like DDTs. I want to spread the world in them. Okay, no, that's bad. You're dumb.
Oh, I thought you meant like the wrestling move. Sorry, briefly it
Those
did
are
occur to
okay.
me. I was like, wait, I like DDTs, and that's the first thing I thought of. And
I mean, wrestling's another great example, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of people, like, there's a huge divide in wrestling where it's just like, either you love it or you hate it. You're not sort of middle of the ground on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be, but a lot of the vocal majority of people are either like, yeah, wrestling, or are you serious? Like,
Yeah.
what is wrong with you? It's a bunch of grown men trouncing around acting like idiots with a bad script.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, it's enjoyable and it's fun and it's entertainment.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's pull out the big guns here. What is the biggest? What do you perceive as your biggest guilty pleasure? Something that you like, that you believe very few other people do like, or that you hear bad things about almost all the time.
Pornography.
My Little Pony.
And combine
Good thing we didn't say those at the exact same time. Pornography actually is a big one for me too, because I mean, like, if you want to talk guilty pleasure, that's kind of the canonical guilty pleasure. But yeah, My Little Pony.
But it's like the guilty pleasure that you know that everybody else.
Yeah, you're kind of like, even though people might come out and say, that at some point they derived pleasure from it, and that's their own guilt usually kicking in and being like, no, I have to be against this in public, and it's kind of like, and you can make all the same kind of, the players are paid too much kind of arguments about this, where it's, all the things where it's like, oh, so and so. She had this terrible childhood, and that's why she's doing this, or like all these kind of things. And it's like, you don't know any of that for sure, or those things that you do know about that's like isolated cases. It's not always the same way, or the industry's changing, or they're doing this or they're doing that. And it's kind of like, I mean, most people don't get that into the industry of pornography. Let's be fair, but yeah, I think those kind of arguments can be made for a lot of that kind of stuff. I don't feel particularly guilty about it, but I'm not about to sit down with my coworkers and start talking about pornography.
Sure.
That's a hard sell.
Yeah. I don't even want to sit down with my friends and talk about pornography generally. It's like, it's a very isolated case. You generally want to talk about it in like the broad strokes.
So I should cross off the pornography podcast that I was going to pitch to you guys.
Well, I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah. Okay, Ian?
In actuality, I would say the big one I hazard to show people, but will eventually be displayed all throughout my house, is I have a thing for vinyl figures.
Oh, right.
Of the Japanese variety.
Yep.
And I have to limit myself in my collection just to figures of women in actual uniforms that exist. So
And not like school uniforms.
No. I have two collections, and they're of the girls of the train systems of Japan and the girls of the Japanese Self-Defense Force. And I counted them up as I was cleaning them to move, I have over 200 of these things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, you
And-
think collecting amiibos is bad? Like,
I mean, it's one thing to have your airsoft sitting on your Billy bookcase as your real estate agent comes into your house to sign some papers, and have them not know that it's airsoft. It's another thing to have really weird Japanese figures of little girls and have to answer questions about what those are for.
well, it's odd, right? Because I mean, it's not easy if they're trains. Like, this is even more specific. It's not trains. It's not girls dressed up as trains or anything. It's like, no, they're dressed as the conductor
Yes.
or as the attendant
or the maintenance workers.
right, exactly.
Or the janitors.
And I love that kind of stuff because that's like real ephemera to me. When I see that, I'm like, oh man, I don't know what any of this is, but they're all, they all mean something. It's not that this one has brown hair and is named Kumiko or whatever. It's like, no, she does this for JR. She does this for this private company. It's like, it's so I don't want to say eccentric. Esoteric.
Specific, too.
Well, it is specific, and that's what I like about that. So I can never, but I always thought like, wow, you have a lot of those.
Yeah. And this, the whole figure obsession is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. Though I did get one moment of retribution on that.
Okay.
And that was when I was having new appliances installed. And I had the delivery people, big gruff delivery guys.
Yep.
And they're bringing my new fridge in. And one of them says, oh yeah, watch out for the Gundam.
Nice.
And I'm like, how do you know what that is? You're not one of us. You have muscles.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I was trying to think of something. I don't even know. I want to say like Entourage, possibly, just because of the amount of hate that show gets. It's pretty awesome, but I love that show so much. And then I was trying to think of other things, and I thought about Smash Mouth, another band that people just hate. But that first album that they put out, it's gold. Go listen to it. It's so good. I mean, I will admit they got worse over time, but no, that first album is phenomenal. But
Is that the one with Walking on the Sun?
Yeah.
And is All Star on that as well?
no, All Star was later.
I see. Okay.
All Star was that
Yeah.
for the like they wrote that song for that movie.
Oh.
What movie was that? That dumb movie with it's like that weird superhero movie with like Janine Garofalo and
Mystery Men? That was written for Mystery
Really?
Men?
wasn't it?
I
It was used in every movie in the 1990s.
I was going to say A Knight's Tale.
Oh.
I had no
Maybe
idea
I'm
this was
wrong.
Mystery Man.
We'll double check that and let you know. We'll fact check. But actually, I had another question. Guilty, like, the term guilty pleasure has been around for a really long time. What I think has actually made guilty pleasures have a lot less stigma to them, and you feel so isolated is the internet, right?
Yeah.
15 years ago, you would have had a collection of 200 little girl figures
Yeah.
and nobody to really talk about it with. Now you have a massive community that you can go out and you can see other people, like that there are other people out there like you who enjoy these things.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a big reason as to why people don't feel so bad about the things that they like anymore, is because you have so many people out there who like this stuff.
Let's
right?
take it a step further. 15 years ago, I wouldn't have even known that these things existed.
Fair, yeah.
I couldn't have even had this guilty pleasure.
That's true. So yeah, I believe the internet has played a pretty massive role in making people feel less bad about liking the things that they do, because they can go out and they can, there's a subreddit for everything.
I will also, though, I will add the corollary that the internet has also helped
That's true.
people feel worse
Yep.
about the things that they like.
Yep.
Because you're exposed to the people who take it to an obsessive end. And me mentioning My Little Pony, that's a very good point.
Oh God, yes.
Because I don't like anything before the 4th gen stuff for like Friendship is Magic, right? I don't even really like the figures that much. I don't like a lot of those kind of things. What I like is the show. And that's one of those things where I like it because it's written well, it's animated well. The cast seems to be having a hell of a good time doing it. And the fact that the big thing is that they seem to be paying a lot of attention to their internet presence. They were really interested in, the fans have cottoned on to this Derpy Hooves character as something they've taken for their own. Hey, you know what, as a joke, let's kind of slip her into every episode if we can.
Yeah.
And to me, what that said is that as creators, not only are we listening to what our fans are saying, we're actually actively trying to give them some sort of feedback to say, hey, we see you out there. We know you like this. So we're going to help, engender that in you. The problem I have is there's always a contingent of people who take it way too far. And then at least by my, the way I feel about it, they take it way too far. And then you end up having to fight off some of those questions of people who always hear the worst of anything. And it's like people who were furries when CSI did an episode that involved YIF piles and stuff like that. It's like when somebody finds out that, oh, wait, you like to dress up like a fox. You put fox ears on and a foxtail on or whatever. You must be into this weird kind of animal-suited sex pile thing. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm not into that thing either. I'm not a furry. But it's like, but I understand it. And it's unfortunate because it's like a lot of times the only time people get a taste of something is they get a taste of the worst thing first. And then you have to, that's the thing that makes me feel guilty is I'm like, I have to try to explain this to you and also not come off like a creep. How do I do that? How do I say I like a cartoon that's intended for 10-year-old girls without sounding like a creep?
Right.
And that's the part where the guilt kicks in.
I don't know how you
do it, man. And I think with that, we're going to end it. With Beej's sad tale of trying to explain to people why he likes My Little Pony.
Absolutely.
It's fine. We love you anyways.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, the LRRcast is brought to you by you, the viewers at home, and all of the lovely people who support our Patreon every month. And we love you guys so much. If you don't know what that is, go to patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. It is basically you give us money and we do awesome things. And you guys have been unbelievably generous so far this year, and we really appreciate it and want to thank you for it. And we will see you next week with a new episode of the LRRcast. Bye, guys.